Once upon a time, there lived a couple who had been married for over 4 years without a child. Chigozie was a man who desperately wanted to have children. For these 4 years, he had made his wife's life a living hell. His wife, Amaka, woke up every morning reminded of her inability to conceive a child. Her husband ridiculed her at every given opportunity, and this began to take a toll on her health. One morning, Chigozie walked in on Amaka, who was busy having breakfast, his heart filled with anger as he watched her eat. "Look at how you are devouring the offspring of another. Your mates are having babies, and you are here eating eggs that you cannot even lay," he said to Amaka, who broke down in tears as she pushed her plate aside. She had lost her appetite. Her husband's words cut deep, but this was not the first time he had spoken cruelly to her. Her mind drifted back to a few weeks ago, to the day they returned from the hospital. She had undergone a series of fertility tests, hoping to find out if IVF was a possible option for her, but the doctors informed her that she had fibroids. Amaka could not believe her ears. She had to know her fate, and the doctors informed her that she had to first undergo an operation to remove the fibroids. They advised that she had to do this before she even thought of undergoing an IVF procedure. Amaka was so heartbroken, knowing how unsupportive her husband had been for all these years. "Do you think I am a money-making machine?" he said to Amaka, who pleaded for some money for the fibroid operation. "Your mates are carrying babies in their wombs while you are here carrying diseases," he said to Amaka angrily as he walked out on her, stating that she would work for her own money. "He's so different," his words echoed in her ears. Her heart ached, but she was not surprised. Chigozie had never shown her any form of kindness in her struggle, and now, when she needed him the most, she was not shocked to see his reaction. Determined not to give up, Amaka wiped her tears and set out to find a way. She took on more menial jobs, working tirelessly from morning till night. She washed clothes, cleaned houses, and even worked as a nanny to a 2-year-old baby whose mother died during childbirth, leaving the baby's father to cater for the child alone. The baby's father, whose name was Ebuka, was a busy man who had no time to care for his baby himself. He put Amaka in charge of his baby, trusting her to nurture and care for the child as if he were her own. At first, it was difficult for Amaka, holding and feeding another woman's child when she longed to have her own, but over time, the baby's innocent giggles and tiny fingers wrapping around hers softened the pain in her heart. Ebuka noticed how deeply she cared for the child. He often returned home to find Amaka singing softly as she rocked the baby to sleep. "You have the heart of a mother," he told her one evening as he watched her wipe his baby's face with her tender hands. Amaka smiled sadly as she said something that caught her boss's attention. "A mother with no child of her own," she whispered. Her boss, Ebuka, watched her with a look of sympathy. He had seen the pain in her eyes, the quiet suffering she carried every day. "You are a mother," he said gently. "A child is not just born from the womb, but from love and care, and I see that in you." His words warmed her heart, but she knew that they wouldn't erase the hurt that she had endured. That evening, as she walked back home, she felt lighter than she had ever felt in a very long time. For once, she had been appreciated. Someone had finally seen her worth, something her husband, Chigozie, never did. But the moment she stepped through the door, she knew trouble awaited her. Her husband, Chigozie, sat in the living room, his face dark with anger. "Where are you coming from?" he asked angrily. "From work," Amaka replied quietly, settling down her bag on the table. Chigozie scoffed and stood up, towering over her. "Work? You mean from your lover's house?" Amaka's brows furrowed in confusion. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb with me," he yelled. I have heard the gossip. You think I don't know. You spend all day in another man's house, taking care of his child, laughing with him, and you expect me to believe that nothing is going on between you two. Amaka's chest tightened. She was too exhausted to argue, but she couldn't let him accuse her of something she didn't do. Ebuka is my boss. I take care of his baby, and that is all, she said. Chigozie laughed bitterly. So now you are defending him. You have time to care for another man's child, but you cannot give me my own child. Maybe if you spent less time playing mother to another man's son, you would finally be able to have children of your own, he said to Amaka, who stood there, broken, to hear such words from him. His words felt like a dagger piercing through her heart. I am doing this for us, Chigozie, she said, her voice trembling. I work hard every day to raise money for my surgery, for the IVF that costs so much money. Shut up, Chigozie said angrily. I am your husband, and I will not have my wife running around another man's house like a shameless woman. You will quit that job immediately, and my decision is final. Amaka stared at him in disbelief. Quit and do what? Sit here and wait for you to insult me every day like you used to. Chigozie's eyes darkened. If you don't leave that job, then get ready to leave my house. Silence fell between them as Amaka swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had sacrificed so much, endured so much, and yet nothing was ever enough for him. She thought of Ebuka's kind words. She thought of the baby's innocent smile and how much she had fought to survive. However, Amaka struggled with the thought of being homeless. She could not risk Chigozie pushing her out of the house at this time. She thought of what to do and decided to quit her job. It was a hard decision for her, but Amaka believed that she would find a better job. She paid a visit to her boss, Ebuka, who pleaded with her to stay. My son is already fond of you, he said to Amaka, whose heart was so heavy. He even went further to propose a 100% increase in her salary, which Amaka could not ignore. With the salary increase, she would be able to save up enough money for her surgery in a short time. She could not pass on such an opportunity, although she knew the consequences of accepting it. Amaka requested some time to think. She arrived home a few minutes later, only to meet a strange woman who claimed to be pregnant for her husband, Chigozie. Her protruding stomach was undeniable. Amaka stood frozen at the entrance of their home, her gaze fixed on the heavily pregnant woman standing in front of her. The woman's hands rested on her round belly, a smirk playing on her lips as she studied Amaka's reaction. You must be Amaka, the woman said with a sneer. I've heard so much about you. Amaka's throat felt dry. She turned to look at her husband, Chigozie, who sat on the couch, avoiding her eyes. He shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Who is she? Amaka asked, though deep down she already knew the answer. The woman chuckled, placing a hand on her hip. I'm Ifeoma, and I'm carrying Chigozie's baby, the child he always wanted, the one you could never give him. The words hit Amaka like a slap across the face. She felt her knees weaken, but she forced herself to stand tall. Slowly, she turned to Chigozie, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me this is a lie. Chigozie finally met her eyes, his expression unreadable. It's true, he admitted, his voice flat. I've waited long enough for you, Amaka. I need a child. Ifeoma is giving me what you failed to. Tears welled up in Amaka's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You humiliated me. You insulted me. You refused to help me get treatment, all while you were busy making another woman pregnant. I did what any man in my position would do, Chigozie said coldly. A man needs an heir, and since you couldn't give me one, I found someone who could. Amaka felt her heart shatter. For years she had endured his cruelty, hoping things would get better. But now standing before her was the truth. Chigozie never truly loved her. Ifeoma smirked again. I came to let you know that I'm moving in. After all, I'm carrying the heir to this family." That was the final blow. Something inside Amaka snapped. She turned without a word, walked into their bedroom, and grabbed a small bag. Her hands trembled as she packed the little belongings she had. When she walked back out, Chigozie raised a brow. "Where do you think you're going?" Amaka inhaled sharply. "I'm leaving." A scoff escaped his lips. "Leave and go where? You have nothing. You have no child, no family to run to. You are nothing without me." For the first time in years, Amaka felt something she hadn't felt before, strength. She wiped her tears and looked him straight in the eyes. "You're wrong, Chigozie. I may have nothing now, but I will rebuild myself. One day, you will regret this moment, and when that day comes, I will not be the broken woman standing in front of you today." With that, she turned and walked out of the house. As she stepped into the cold night, a single thought filled her mind. She would rise again. The cold night air hit Amaka's skin as she stepped out of the house she had once called home. With nothing but a small bag slung over her shoulder and pain weighing heavy in her heart, she walked away, refusing to look back. She had no idea where she was going, but she knew one thing: she could never return to Chigozie. Her feet carried her to the only place she could think of: her boss, Emeka's house. When she arrived at the gate, she hesitated. Would he turn her away? Would he think less of her for showing up like this? Before she could change her mind, the gate opened, and Emeka stepped out. His eyes widened when he saw her standing there, disheveled and tear-streaked. "Amaka," he called, concern etched on his face. "What happened?" She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The weight of everything crashed down on her, and for the first time since she had left Chigozie's house, she broke down in tears. Without hesitation, Emeka stepped forward and pulled her into a comforting embrace. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe here." His words broke whatever was left of her resolve, and she sobbed against his chest. He led her inside and sat her down. "Tell me everything," he urged gently. Between sniffles, Amaka recounted everything: Chigozie's betrayal, the other woman, and how he had thrown her away, like she meant nothing. Emeka listened silently, his jaw clenching with every painful detail. When she was done, he sighed deeply. "You don't deserve this, Amaka. You've been through too much already." She wiped her tears. "I don't know what to do now." "You don't have to figure it all out tonight," Emeka reassured her. "Stay here for as long as you need. You're not alone." His kindness overwhelmed her, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. Days turned into weeks, and Amaka slowly began to rebuild her life. She worked tirelessly, saving every penny she earned. Emeka was always there, supporting her, encouraging her, and reminding her of her worth. One day, as they sat in the living room watching the children play, Emeka turned to her with a soft smile. "You know, Amaka, you have the heart of a mother." She chuckled, shaking her head. "A mother without a child." He reached for her hand. "A child is not only born from the womb, but from love and care, and I see that in you." His words touched something deep within her. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that she was more than just a woman who couldn't conceive. One evening, as she was preparing dinner, she received an unexpected phone call. Her mother's voice trembled with suppressed anger. "Chigozie came to our house today," she said. Amaka's heart pounded. "Why?" "He came with that woman, demanding that we return his bride price." Silence stretched between them. Amaka swallowed hard. Her mother's voice softened. "You have a right to fight this, my daughter." Amaka closed her eyes. "No, Mama, let him go." Her mother hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I was his wife. Now I am free." When she ended the call, She felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She was truly free. Months passed, and the day of her fibroid surgery finally arrived. Emeka accompanied her to the hospital, holding her hand as they wheeled her into the operating room. But then, something unexpected happened. As the doctors examined her, their murmurs of confusion filled the room. Then came a shocking revelation. "Wait," one doctor said, staring at the ultrasound screen. "This isn't just fibroids." Amaka blinked in confusion. The late surgeon turned to the team. "She's in labor." Panic filled the room. "What?" Amaka whispered, barely conscious. One doctor turned to her, eyes wide. "You've been carrying a baby all along." Her world spun. Before she could process it, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. Then everything went dark. When she woke up hours later, the first thing she heard was the soft cries of a baby. She turned her head weakly and saw Emeka sitting beside her, cradling a tiny baby in his arms. His eyes shone with emotion as he smiled down at her. "You're a mother, Amaka." Tears streamed down her face. "Ah, daughter?" He nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, you carried her all this time and didn't even know." Her heart swelled as he gently placed the baby in her arms. At that moment, everything, Chigosi's betrayal, the years of pain, the humiliation, faded away. Her tiny daughter, with soft fingers curling around hers, was proof that life had not forsaken her. Emeka reached out, wiping a tear from her cheek. "You're stronger than you know, Amaka. You always were." As she gazed down at her miracle baby, she realized something. She had lost so much, but she had gained something far greater. She had found love, peace, and most importantly, herself. Meanwhile, in another part of the hospital, Chigozie sat in the corridor, his hand trembling as he covered his face. Tears streamed down his cheeks. No one came to console him, because at that very moment, in a cruel twist of fate, Ifeoma had lost their child. The son he had mocked Amaka for not giving him was gone before he could even take his first breath. As the whispers spread through the hospital, Chigozie could hear them. The same people who once ridiculed Amaka for being barren now spoke of her miracle baby. He couldn't believe it. His wife, the woman he had discarded like trash, had given birth to a child on the same day that he lost his son. Shame crashed over him like a tidal wave. He needed to see her. He needed to beg for forgiveness. Summoning the last shred of his pride, Chigozie forced himself to stand. He made his way to Omaka's hospital room, his heart pounding. But when he got there, he froze. There she was, cradling her baby, looking happier than he had ever seen her, and beside her stood Emeka, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. Chigozie swallowed hard. He fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "Amaka, please, forgive me." She looked down at him, her expression calm. "You want my forgiveness, Chigozie?" she asked softly. He nodded desperately. "I forgave you the day you threw me out like trash," she said. "That day I decided you would no longer have control over my happiness." His eyes widened with pain. "Then, does that mean—" She shook her head. "Forgiveness doesn't mean a second chance." He let out a strangled sob. "You went to my family and demanded my bride price back," she continued, her voice unwavering. "That day, Chigozie, our marriage ended." His shoulders slumped. He had lost her forever. Slowly he got to his feet, casting one last look at her and the baby. Then, with heavy steps, he turned and walked away. And Amaka, she watched him disappear down the corridor, feeling nothing, no hunger, no satisfaction, just peace. For the first time in her life, she was truly free. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and be blessed.